We're going to talk about the um, historical foundation that we have as a church, and then we're going to talk about where we are right now, presently, and then we're going to talk about our hopes and dreams. And those are all going to be interactive. So tonight, I would really like to have you engage with me in what you remember about our church. For some of you who haven't been here very long, there'll be some things and some people that you'll hear about that you're thinking, I never met that person. For others who've been here for a while, you're going to look in the list and say, hey, this person's name is missing. And I'm really hoping you do. Because I went through a lot of different stuff. I went through the church's member list that's in the file cabinet and racked my brain and called some people and got a lot of different names, but I didn't get everybody, I'm sure. So, in fact, I know that's the case. Maybe some of you can help me with Melanie Jaramillo's grandmother's name. I can't remember her name. Avis. That's right. All right, so she should be on here. And there's others. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So let's go ahead and sing. I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God, and that's number 419. While she's coming up, let me just run through the announcements. The library stuff is still in that room. And as I said this morning, after today, in fact, we've already put it up for sale to people from outside the church. My thought on that was I didn't want to sell it to the people in the church. I want you guys to have whatever you want. So if there's stuff you're interested in, take it and be part of that. And then after today, we're going to try to get it out of here. So because we've got to use that room. So if you are interested, please, after the service, take advantage of that. There are nomination forms in the middle foyer. So if you're a member, please fill one of those out and drop it in the box by 2 weeks from today. November 9th is 2 weeks from today. So if you'll do that for us, we'd really appreciate it. Midweek service Wednesday. Friday's Halloween. There's still more tracts out there and in the back foyer. So you've got tracts in both places. Some of them are specifically for Halloween. Some are not really specifically Halloween, but you could hand them to kids on Halloween, and they would still like them because they're cartoons, right? So the kids would like that. The gospel is presented in those, so it gives you an opportunity to do that. Again, we're going to try to furnish that apartment upstairs without cost to the church, except that we did buy a small refrigerator that was on clearance at Walmart, and so we did do that. That'll go up there, but we're trying to furnish that as much as we can on our own. So if you have stuff that you can help us with, that sign-up sheet is in the middle foyer. You can take a look at that and see if you'd help us with that. Lots of travel coming up. Sorry about that. I wrote this up with Chuck going to Dallas and India, and then I talked to Chuck, and he said, no, I'm not going to India. I'm not going to Dallas until after I go to New York. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know where I heard that. Yeah, I don't know where I heard that, but I heard it wrong. So anyway. Okay, so number 419. Ready? I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain, cleansed by his blood, joint heirs with Jesus as we travel this sod. For I'm part of the family of God. All right, that's all we're going to do tonight. Just a real short thing that way. Jan asked me if I had a scripture reference for tonight, and when I said no, she laughed at me. You didn't either? Did you just laugh with me? Anyway, I don't really have a scripture reference for tonight, but you can think about the numbers of times in Scripture where it calls people's memory into the forefront. I want you to remember this. I mean, Jesus himself said, "Do this in remembrance of me." So there's memorials all the way through. You have all of the festivals of Israel, which are memorials. You have special days in Israel, which are meant to remind the people of what God had done in their midst. And so the concept of bringing back things that happened in the past is not foreign to those of us who walk with God. One of the things you have to be careful about when you get into memories is that we can't live in the past. We can't live back there. The past is over. You can't live there. It's good to remember it. It's good to build on it. It's not good to live in it. It's not good to say, boy, I wish we could go back to the old days. The old days are gone. They're over. And so it's not some place that we can live. But we can build on that foundation. And that's one of the things that I want us to do as we think about where we're going for in the future. So the founding of the church, let me just walk through the founding and the pastors, and then I'm going to have you jump in with people that you remember. And maybe when you jump in, once we get down to the people, when you jump in, maybe you can say, here's what I remember about this person. When Jan and I were coming over and couldn't think of Avis's name, one of the things we said was, there's rarely been a person in the church since I've been here who was a better greeter than Avis. I mean, she spent time getting to know people at the door. She was just phenomenal with that. She's been a pastor's wife for 50 years. Just tremendous. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. You can even pick names out of the ones that are listed here and say, I just got this memory about this person. And then you'll notice that the fourth thing on here has to do with ministries. I've listed a whole bunch of ministries that we have been a part of as a church, or still are in some cases a part of as a church. And what I would like you to do is, again, hey, what about this ministry? For instance, and I didn't put it in here, when Carl and Virginia were still living, Carl had a newsletter, a senior newsletter that he published, monthly or quarterly, something like that. But he would put that out, and not only would he give it to the seniors in our church, he'd hand that thing out to other seniors that he knew, trying to get them to come and be a part of our church. So you can think about those kinds of things as well, if you think of a ministry that we haven't listed here. So let's come back to the founding. Carl and Virginia were married after World War II and were living in Long Island. And they were attending a regular Baptist church on Long Island. Hempstead, I think it was Hempstead Baptist Church. Not Hempstead Street, just Hempstead Baptist Church. And they moved out here to Colorado. This was Virginia's home area. In fact, when Jan and I first moved down here to Colorado Springs, her brother was still the county assessor for El Paso County. So this was home stomping ground. If I remember right, her family homesteaded here in the Colorado Springs area. Well, that takes you back a ways. So they moved out here to Colorado, and they started looking for a regular Baptist church, or a church that would be similar to what they were familiar with back on Long Island. And they looked, and they looked, and they looked, and according to what we have in our history stuff, they looked for 4 years and didn't find anything. And they finally just said, okay, well, our church constitution when we left there said, if you can't find one, start one. So Carl was kind of a bullheaded guy, right? I mean, for those of you who knew Carl, it's kind of like, if don't tell me I can't do this. So he just founded the church. He got help from regular Baptist church builders. He got help from Floyd Davis. Floyd was a pastor in the Denver area. Floyd had been Jan's pastor after her dad died in Kansas City at Olivet Baptist Church. Got help from Floyd Davis, and they got this church started. Wes Clem was one of our first missionaries that we supported. Wes was a missionary to the Mormons in Utah. And he was just getting started in his work. And he heard about this group in Colorado that was talking about trying to start a church. And so he got in contact with Carl and met with Carl, and the church was founded in January of 1964 in Carl and Virginia Wirt's living room in a meeting with Wes Clem. So that's, think about how quickly this stuff happened. They have this meeting, and they decide to start a church in January of 1964. On February 11, just less than 2 weeks later, they organize right at 2 weeks later, they organize as a fellowship. On February 16th, they have their first service in the downtown YMCA. April 28th, they're recognized by fellow regular Baptist churches as a duly organized Baptist church. They did that in less than a month. They were already organized. In less than a month they were meeting. By April 28th, they're recognized as the duly organized Baptist church. Now, when you recognize a church, when a council of churches gets together and recognizes a church, they take a look at their constitution, they take a look at their bylaws, they take a look at all the stuff that is happening in the church and how they're going to function as a church, and that's what they base their decision on, is whether you are a duly organized church. From January to April, they had all that stuff in place. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Even though they used things like the GRBC Constitution and stuff like that in order to get off the ground, still pretty amazing that they had that ready by April 28th. And then in June 1964, so less than 6 months later, they're welcomed into the GRBC as a fellowshipping church. Carl was a Navy Seabee. In World War II, Carl was on a destroyer off Okinawa. If you were around when Carl was here, he would tell stories about being on that destroyer and being attacked by kamikaze pilots, and that one of their shipmates had been killed, and they tried 3 times to bury him at sea and had to stop the burial ceremony 3 different times in order to fight off kamikaze attacks, because the destroyers were the outer screen. They were there to stop the kamikazes from sinking the big boys. And so they had to try to fight off these attacks, and after the 3rd one, they finally got this poor guy buried at sea. And so, I mean, that was the kind of stuff that Carl went through. When World War II was over, he got out of the Navy, but he went back in, this time as a Seabee. If you don't know what a Seabee is, the 2 letters, Construction Battalion, CB, they just eventually called them Seabees, and then they would spell it S-E-A-B-E-E-S, Seabees. So he learned construction. And once they decided to start a church, they also bought property right here. So this property was purchased in that time frame, and they began construction on the property. And Carl would be, in today's terminology, Carl would probably have been determined to be the general contractor. He was also most of the subcontractors. He did a lot of the work on the church. When I first came, Carl and Virginia were still here, and he would say things like, we did a lot of stuff we didn't have to do. Like, there's extra reinforcement over all of the windows and over all the doors that they didn't have to put in, but they did because they wanted it to be strong. They bought the best door closers that you could find. If you go out today and you buy the top quality door closer, it won't be as good as what we have on our church right now. The stuff that we have on our church, well, in some cases we've had to replace a couple of them. But you see these ones that have this great big block that if you're tall, you can crack your head on it. That stuff's original equipment. It's 60 years old and still functioning, still working. So he put a lot of TLC into this place. People come in here and they say, whoa, look at the beams and look at the ceiling. Do you guys polish that? No, we never touch it. But it is beautiful. And that was Carl's design. When they were building the church, money was a little bit short. And the result of that was that we had flat roofs. When I first came, the roofs were flat. And so you guys can remember that. Warren, you guys can remember that. We did a lot of work. I've got a picture of myself having driven my head into a nail upstairs with blood running down the front of my head. We did a lot of work to angle those because we had some problems with those flat roofs. Again, when I first came, that was the outside wall on top, and there were 2 windows there. And for an evening service like this, I had the sun right in my face the whole time. It's just one of those memories that I have of early days here, or my early days here. So that's the founding of the church. The pastors were, the first pastor was Wes Clem. After he said, I'll help you get the church started, he stuck around for a year and helped them get their feet on the ground. So he was here 1964 into 1965. When he left, they called D. Vernon Harrah, and he came and was here from 1965 through 1968. The first church interim pastor was Harvey Seidel. I remember Harvey Seidel from my days at Faith. He would come and they had him speak in chapel. He would do dorm devotions for us guys. He was just a dynamic, soul-winning kind of a guy. Well, he was the interim pastor in 1968. Then Herb Farrar came and was here from 1968 until 1969. I don't know what happened with Herb. When I first came, we arrived right at the time that the church was getting ready to celebrate its 30th anniversary. We came in 1993. The 30th anniversary was 1994. So we started planning that, started inviting people, and we invited all the former pastors. By this time, Herb was getting up in years, and he came and expressed appreciation that we would have him come back, because apparently when he left, it was not pleasant. It was a difficult pastorate, a difficult parting. And he really felt hurt by it. So just one of those things. I had no idea. We just invited our former pastors. And he was just really grateful for that. So Herb was here just 1968 to 1969. The second of our interim pastors was Kenneth Mitchell. He was our interim pastor in 1969. And then Les Newell came, and Les was here from 1970 to 1973. So now if you look at that list, the first 4 pastors and 2 interim pastors were here for less than 10 years. So you have Wes Clem, Vernon Harrah, an interim, and Harvey Seidel, Herb Farrar, an interim, and Ken Mitchell, and Les Newell from 1964 till 1973. So less than 10 years. Ron Burnett came and he was here for 19 years. And now I've been here for 33 years. So the first 4 pastors, less than a decade. The next 2 pastors, a half a century. That's how God has used things here at our church. All right, so that gives you a little bit of a background on the history of the church. What I would really like to do now, just for the next however long we're here, is just kind of reminisce about who God brought along, how God used those people, and what God did building the foundation for the church that we have today. You see the list of people. I put them in alphabetical order. They go left to right and back to left and right and all the way down. So they're not in chronological order, and they're not necessarily. It's not everybody. Like I said, there's people that are missing off this list that need to be on there, and that's where I'm kind of depending on you. And there were some people who were here for 2 or 3 months, and then they were gone. I didn't have a lot of those folks on the list. But these are a lot of people who had an impact in our church in one form or another. So, tell me what you remember. There are some non-members on this list, yeah. I didn't put the people from today. You might see when you get down here to the top of the second page, I've got Lee and Anita Hood on there. And Lee and Anita will still attend from time to time. By the way, keep praying for Lee. What he's going through right now is extremely serious. They can't do the surgery until they fix the infection, and the infection has been resistant, and he's got to have the surgery. So keep praying for them. So there's still people who are around, but all of these people are gone. They're not members of our church or functioning in our church today. a number of these people were in positions of real strong responsibility in our church. Some of them were deacons. Some of them, like Rick Beer, was a Sunday school superintendent. One of the things that really impressed Jan and I when we came down to candidate in October of 1992, we drove up to the church, and that sign out front was absolutely aflame with flowers that were brilliant and meticulously cared for. And that was Harold and Phyllis Giroux. Harold was a World War II vet. He fought. That was brutal warfare. And he was involved in that. His wife was a U.S. Marine. And they both stood about this tall, right? I mean, these little bitty people. But I'm telling you, when it came to the flowers, they were amazing what they did with flowers. And it's one of the first things we noticed as we drove up. Whoa, look at that. Because we're thinking it's October, things are dead, it's not going to be much. They still hadn't had a frost, and they were just beautiful. So anyway, stuff like that. I'm going to shut up. You guys talk. Yes, David?
That reminds me that Hal and Gail Bell, I don't see them on the list.
Yeah, they're there. Third one down on the right column.
Oh, there. Anyway, they took care of those flowers for a while, too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had a number of people who have done that kind of thing. Right now, Donna is coming over and taking care of the flowers that are in by the sign on a fairly regular basis. So, Sammy, you were starting to say something.
No, I said, so will this what you want us to do?
I just want you to if you see a name on the list that strikes a memory, say, this is what I remember about this person. If you see a spot on the list where a name should be, like we just mentioned Avis, I think her last name was McCutcheon. Okay. Mick something. Okay. So anyway, like Avis, Jan and I were trying to think of, there was another couple that was military, and when they left, they moved to Washington, and I can't think of their names. Go.
One that was connected to me was, I knew it now, Mark and Lawrence Richards.
Yes. Right. And I never knew them, but I've heard you talk about them in the past.
And also the other thing I did was, I think I became a member on a Wednesday night, which was somewhat unusual, but they needed a WANA worker, so I became a member and then went and worked in a WANA that same night. That was my introduction to serving in the church.
Yeah.
Also, then you don't have the Strucks on here, Tom.
Oh, Tom and Lori. Why? How in the world did I miss that? Lori was my first secretary.
And then, I don't remember the last name, something like Strickland or something, Terry, and his wife, they moved to Omaha.
Yes.
One very old one is Wayne and his wife Wehrman. I just remember them because we used to go on visitation on Thursday night. And we showed up at their house once. That was when they first were, I just remember it because it was one of the first people I met on visitation. And it's Terry Stackhouse.
Stackhouse is who I thought you were talking about there.
No,
The ones that moved to Omaha.
well, there was another one that moved on. And Stackhouse, he directed the fire school.
He did, yeah.
And then the Roberts, I don't see him here, he was the showrunner.
Yes. Yeah.
He was in the Army.
Then moved to Washington State.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Bigelows moved up north.
Now, that's before my time, but again, they have been here numerous times.
Yeah, I remember them because he was the financial secretary before I was.
Oh, really? Okay.
After I took it over, I wasn't going to do paper copies like he, so I computerized it all. And then there was Gary and Vicki Bourne. You probably knew them.
Again, that predates me, but And who else? Gary Cobb.
And Cobb, yeah, Gary Cobb.
Man, there's a lot of people. I kind of knew that would be the case. As I worked on this all week, and I kept thinking to myself, I know there's people I'm missing. I know there's names I'm not remembering here. And
The ministries, I guess we haven't gone there, but we also had a couple other kids ministries like Master Clubs, and I don't see Food Tractors on there.
yeah, I just kind of put them under Awana.
Okay.
I think, what did I say after Awana? Club Ministries or, yeah, children's clubs. One of the other things that we had, I didn't put down as a ministry, and when I'm looking at people here, Jeff and Angel Byer, Jeff Byer and Rick Beer, and myself, and Larry, and Joe Childs, and some others played softball. We had a softball team when we first came down. One of the...
Softball team was a good way to learn the Christian attitude.
It is. It's also, it's one of those things that reveals it maybe more than teaches it. What is your attitude? One of my memories of softball, and this is not a good memory, and it's too bad, but Joe Childs was playing second base, and I was playing a rover in right center field, and a ball came out to me, and I hollered home, but I meant to. My intention was to throw it to third, and the ball came out to me, and Joe saw that, and I hollered home, and she turned her head toward home, and she was right in the line of path up to third base, and as soon as I let that thing go, I knew she was in trouble, and it hit her right on the side of the head. Feet came out from underneath her, and she hit hard, and what's worse, the person was safe at third base. No, but that was one of those where, I mean, your heart just stops in your throat because you just think to yourself, what kind of damage could have been done? A rover in right field is not very far away. I mean, I was probably not more than 20 yards away when I let go of that ball. And so we won some games. We lost a bunch of games. We had a lot of fun playing softball. Something like that, yeah. Yep. Yep. It was an awesome privilege. Larry was a good friend. Larry did a lot of work around here. You look in this auditorium, when we first came, and then these lights were frosted globes, lights inside frosted globes. And that light would kind of get trapped in that, and then these windows were yellow. You guys remember that? And you walked in here, and it was really dim and kind of not inviting. And so one of the first things we did was put all this stuff up, and Larry did a ton of the work on the walls. Warren?
I remember the sheetrock because I had no experience doing that. So I was working on, I still remember it was over there by the piano side of the wall. And I was taping it up and butting it. And I got it pretty much done, and I said, I asked Larry, I said, well, does it look good? You know, because I thought it was pretty good. He says, yeah, you did a good job, but you'd never make it because it took you way too long.
Larry, that was Larry's line of work. He was just really good at that.
Very fast.
Yeah, he was really fast.
He'd go work with the trowel, and I would sit there going, slow.
Terry, I can't remember her last name, but it was a Cadillac, and that was the first vehicle I learned how to drive on. Yeah,
He gave you lessons?
and because she registered that vehicle in her name and
I mean, Terry Stackhouse, but I don't remember them having a Cadillac.
Well, but the Cadillac was, he said that it was either somebody hiding the church or something. It has to do with the church.
Okay.
And it was parking to Terry Place. And so we talked about it. She said, oh, yeah, she was so glad to teach me how to drive. We were all around town. But I think,
They would never, this is not Terry, they would never have stood up and said, we're responsible in large part, but in large part they were. Tim and Carol Melchior did a ton of work helping you guys get here without you ever knowing what they were doing. Behind the scenes, they were just working hard to make sure that you got here to the States. So, it's one of well, Warren, thank you. You've really filled out our list there better.
I'm not surprised because I don't remember names.
Well, you remembered those. Appreciate it.
I don't remember Terry. The one thing about Terry was we sat, the one Terry I was talking about, we sat next to each other in the choir. And if I made a mistake, he pointed it out.
Is this a redhead?
No.
Okay, so this is a different Terry. It's not Stackhouse. This is another guy.
And it was one of those things God used to teach me. I just prayed about it. And it was odd after I had given it to the Lord, he stopped bothering me.
Maybe you stop making the mistakes.
I don't remember if it was Jackson that called you or if it was Candace and they're down in Palm Bars.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Jackson or the Palm Bars that called you one day, church, where they are. Was it Palm Bars?
Yeah.
I just thought that was neat that
Yeah.
they're continuing to use some of the things.
From time to time, we'll get a call or get a text or an email from somebody who's been in the church before and will thank us for giving them the opportunity to serve or providing them with some materials that they are using in some other area. And, it's good to hear because you don't, not especially in a military town, a lot of times people aren't here very long. They're here for 2 or 3 years and then they're gone. Palm Bars and AGs were kind of in that, although Jackson wasn't military, but they were kind of in that 2 to 3 year window. The other thing about AGs, and you might remember this with, I forget the name of the hurricane, but they went down after Hurricane whatever her name was, and to Texas, and assisted with a church down there. It was the Mayer brothers and Jackson and, pardon? Bethany AG, yeah. Yeah. Somebody else. Other names. Read through the list, and if something pops up on in your mind, just blurt it out.
I remember, see their face, I can't remember their names. Kate's.
Yeah.
After Jeremiah was here, I wasn't a member, and he roped me into helping deal with the projector problem. I'm so glad we replaced the projector since then. But even at that point, I was getting roped in rough to kill us.
So, that's another couple that will contact us from time to time, Jeremiah and Jennifer. They talk about how much they love. Yeah. Yeah, so the older graduated and went on to, what's the name of what do they call that at Shepherd's? He didn't go there. Okay. Okay.
so Valentine, I remember she did a lot of gardening and she would bring these fruit from her garden.
Oh, yes. They were Kate's next door neighbors. They lived next door to Burl and Bernadine. You know, not Bernadine. Bernadine was gone by that time, but they lived next door to Burl. Yeah, if you ever saw Burl's backyard, it was a wildlife sanctuary, and along with a lot of stuff that he grew back there. But he had birds and squirrels and who knows, you know, mountain lions. I don't know what else was in his backyard, but it was like a wildlife sanctuary back there. Pretty cool. Yes?
You have Marge on here, but she had a daughter, a lamb,
Right.
with a star. You should have a star by it. Her husband's now a pilot. I think he's still here.
Yeah, Marge should have a star.
Yeah, a commercial pilot for her son-in-law.
Okay.
She moved over to Grand Junction. I think that's where they.
Yes, and that's where Marge moved when she left here, and she passed over there, if memory serves. So.
And we've always told the story how that Marge, when she was younger, someone took her to church. And because of that, she had such a heart for kids and always willing to pick up kids. If somebody knew there were kids that needed to be picked up, Marge would be the first one to say, I'll go get them.
And off and on, Marge taught kids classes all the time here. I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
The other thing interesting about Marge, you ever talk to her wife? She was a welder when you learned her why. And that was just, she came out of some training, didn't have any college education, needed work because she had a daughter. What can I do? And so she went, found out it was fairly inexpensive, and she became an apprentice welder. Did that for years.
Marge was not married. Marge was a single mom. And a lot of times single moms feel like they're out of place in a church. There's other families and that kind of thing and so forth and so on, and they don't really want to be a part of it. Marge was heart and soul part of Rustic Hills. And she just loved the church and loved on the church. And it was great to have Marge with us. She did it for years and years and years, and past when she could do much of anything else. But she did that for years and years, and loved doing it. You would talk with her about it, and she loved doing that. She just really enjoyed that being that kind of a ministry. And it was interesting to see her and Bill together. You talk about Mutt and Jeff. I mean, he's a big, tall guy, you know, and she's little bitty, 2 foot nothing, and it was always fun to see them together.
After she got out of her home, she was at Winslow Court, and she would always come when you were the speaker.
Yep.
Almost up until she passed away.
Yep. Yeah. We had a number of people over at Winslow Court. Carl and Ginny were over at Winslow Court, and Dorothy was over at Winslow Court, and let's see who else. Ruby Baker was over at Winslow Court, right? She should be on here.
We have Adena Hackles on here, and she had Adric as her son. He's married Amelia, and we don't have the kids.
No, I don't have the. I should have had them.
Adric and Amelia should be on your son. Are they?
Taylor.
Okay, but Adena had, I guess Adric's under himself, not under Adena. Adena could have a star.
Yeah, she should have a star.
Adric was part of her family.
And so was Ariel.
Yeah, she probably picked Ariel's name.
Well, yeah, it's not. It's Smith now, but maybe let's put that in parentheses. That they was her name when she was here, and now she's Ariel Smith.
I don't know how you list the Dustins on here.
What?
You don't have them on here, but all 3 Dustin children were born and raised in this church. Obviously, their parents are still here, so it's.
And that's why I didn't put them on there, and I didn't put our kids on there either. Same thing. They weren't born here, but they were reared here.
You got Ryan
I got Ryan on there because Ryan was a summer intern. So Josiah Brown was a summer intern. Ryan was a summer intern. And you can see that in the parentheses there. Don Hines, who was my nephew, was a summer intern. Lane, of course. Don Hines, yeah. Top of the second page, second column. At one point, we had the Keists and the Johnsons and the Kazareviches all in our church. We had 3 chaplains in our church at the same time. That was kind of a fun period as well. When I did my sabbatical, Tom was the guy who did most of the work here at the church. That was back in 2006? 2006. Yeah, the Matthew should be on here. That's recent. John did a number of things to try to bring us into the 21st century, screaming and kicking, as it were, but
I mean, one thing that most people don't know about, when I first came, the whole front of the church was different. Up there, orange carpet was not near as functional. It didn't have just the center thing, and piano and the organ were down on the floor.
choir loft was over here.
Part of what Larry Child's helped.
Yeah. Yeah, we redesigned this whole auditorium area, built that sound booth, because it used to be that we didn't have a sound booth.
There was a sound thing, but it was just in the corner.
Yeah. So the choir loft was over here. I used to tell people I could take one step back and baptize myself, that the pulpit was that close to the baptistry. So we built that out, put the choir in the middle, and there's actually subwoofers under here. I don't know if they still work. That's what those things are for. Maybe we can crank that up and see if they're still going. Okay.
That's real low stuff.
So Scott Wu, his parents were here too, right?
Who?
Scott.
His parents were here? No, I don't, no. Oh, that's right. I had completely forgotten about that. Scott played a role in our church in a couple of different ways that were influential. I had never been on a ride along, and Scott took me on a ride along. And I got to see the boredom that is punctuated by moments of insanity. He had a call on one occasion. It was interesting this is Scott, right? He comes to our church and, we have nice conversations or whatever, and he got a call about the possibility of somebody with a gun while I was with him, behind a theater. And as we're going 70 miles an hour down side streets, he just looked at me and said, "Stay in the car." Not a question, a statement, a command, stay in the car. And so it turned out it was just a guy throwing a broom away. But we also, I don't know if you remember, there used to be a nightclub at Chelton and Airport. Or not Chelton and Fountain. Do you remember that? There used to be a nightclub there. They've since torn it down. But on that, his shift went until 2 in the morning. And that nightclub shut down around 1 or something like that. And we pulled up, and we were one of maybe 6, 7 police cruisers around this place, because it was just known that when they let out, there are fights. And there's gunplay, and there's all kinds of nastiness that goes on here. And so they just were present to be sure that didn't happen. It was an interesting time. Yes?
A couple other things there. When I first came, there was, I don't know
The home was east, right?
No, it's over on Nevada. Cherith, I think it was called Cherith.
Cherith home.
Yeah, and they had like 3 or 4 older girls that lived there, and they all attended here. And it was one of those, it was not a challenge for the church, but it kept your eyes open to like, you know, what normal life for a lot
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
And I don't remember their names, but they were the, what do you call them, parents?
Yeah, dorm parents.
And he was a volunteer firefighter. And you mentioned, the reason I thought of him, you mentioned right along with Scott. So I'm over there once and some alarm goes off. And you want to go with me? And okay, they get excited when they get a call.
Yeah.
And it turned out there was a dumpster fire somewhere. That's all it was.
But that can turn into something worse. So there's another couple that it just dawned on. Jim and Becky Meek.
Yeah.
They're not on here.
They were camp ministry for a long time.
They were in camp ministry for a long time, and they were here when they were here at our church. Jim was involved in the music ministry, right? Right? Did he lead the choir? And as they should be on here, Becky grew up about 50 miles from where I grew up, and her dad was a pastor, and my dad was a pastor, and our families would get together. I'm surprised I didn't remember to put them on, but. Is that right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, before you go, Warren, we were talking about this morning. Probably Mike and Linda are the senior. Pardon?
No, Warren, I came in 80. I thought you came in 79.
Actually, you and Florence Richard came to our house and visited us.
Oh,
when we
okay.
visited.
So they are.
Yeah, they all just me.
Just you. Yeah, not
Carol was 7 years out.
we were talking about when you guys were dating, and Carol coming to visit the house, and you not sure that you were serious, that she was serious about this yet, and she comes in and says, "Well, that's going to have to go." Ooh, she is serious.
But there was one thing that just shows how different stuff is today. We used to have Sunday school. Like I said, I worked with Alana when I first came. And so once a year, where I worked, they used to own land up by Woodland Park. There was a few cabins on it that you could check out. And so I would take the boys in my 4th through 6th grade Alana once a year up there in the neighborhood. And back then, you know, when I take them out on outings, back then, there was nothing wrong with a single guy taking 4 or 5 boys up there by themselves. And, you know, with all the stuff that goes on and all the rules now, you couldn't even approach that.
No.
But it was just an interesting way things have changed.
Well, there's a lot more people on here. Charlotte, Trig and Betty, Dwayne and Tina, Faye Sellers, Joe and Debbie Tassel, Jay and Bronwyn Sachs. A lot of people on here that we haven't even touched on, which is fine. You can just kind of take this on your own and just reminisce a little bit about the people. Pardon? No.
One thing, you kind of alluded to it, but one thing that maybe it's true about all the churches here, that we have some military going in and out, going in and out.
Yep.
They come to our church because they like the church they've been in at their last station, wherever they were stationed.
You can start going down through the list and you can see the people that were here because of the Chickerings were military. Juan Guerra was military. Dan and Debbie Enslin was military. You just go down through the list. There's a lot of people that, and again, I'm sure we missed some because they weren't here for very long. We only have 10 minutes left in the hour. I wanted to just spend some time thinking about ministries, because I think sometimes we look at where we are right now, and we look back at ministries and we say, man, we're just not doing anything. Well, there's some ministries that we're not doing today. There's ministries we're doing today that we didn't do in the past. There's things that as a church grows and morphs and changes and so forth, that change with the church. But I just thought it was interesting just to think through how many different ways we have ministered as a church. And I'm going to read this part of the list. And as I'm reading this, think about other things that we have done. And same kind of thing. Let's plug them in. I think it's important for us as a church family to recognize the impact that this church has had over 6 decades. We've had Sunday school since the beginning. And ABF is Adult Bible Fellowship, so adult Sunday school classes. Morning worship, Sunday night services. When I first came, Sunday night service was kind of like Sunday night light, or Sunday morning light. It felt just like a Sunday morning service in many respects. Now we call it Sunday night life. Midweek prayer and Bible study. A lot of churches have dumped anything on Sunday night and dumped anything in the middle of the week. They just don't do it anymore. And we've continued to do that. Awana and, as you said, Truth Trackers and master clubs. We've had children's ministries like that. Small groups, adult choir, children's choir, youth ministry, singles ministry, missions support. One of the things that this church has been known for is our commitment to missions. Pastoral trips, and I mentioned this morning. Ironman breakfasts that have gone way back. Bob and Marge. Bob was really instrumental in putting that Ironman breakfast on the map. Bob Williams. Yes. Yep, at the end. Church potlucks, visitation, hospital visitation, weddings and funerals and Valentine's dinner. I've got my wedding and funeral files. Surprised me as to how many weddings we have had over these 30 years and how many funerals we have had, how many opportunities we've had to have people into our church who don't normally go to church who hear the gospel as a result of those kinds of services. Valentine's dinner, back in 2014, a Holy Land trip. Good Friday services, Last Supper dinners, a couple of those. Resurrection cantatas, men's retreats, Mother's Day celebrations, Father's Day celebrations, Memorial Day activities, vacation Bible schools, 4th of July activities, ladies' retreats, game dinners, senior luncheons. And again, that predates me. The senior luncheon predates me because that was already going on when I got here because of Carl Wirtz. Missions conferences, trunk or treat, appreciation dinners, Thanksgiving services, Parade of Lights float, Ladies' Christmas Fellowship, Christmas cantatas, Christmas with the Pastor, Rocking Chair Christmas, Neighborhood Christmas Fellowships, Christmas concerts, thinking particularly of the Saunders family. Christmas, by the way, they're coming December 21st, that evening, for a concert. Christmas Eve services, New Year's Eve fellowships, all youth all-nighters, usually after New Year's Eve fellowships. This Winslow Court ministry, I don't know how many years I've been doing that. Got a top 20 by now that I've been going to Winslow Court. Army RBC conferences and pastors' roundtables. Our 30th anniversary celebration that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And our 50th anniversary celebration where we had some of the Flying W Wranglers here for that. That was fun. That's just, honestly, that was about 20 minutes of time to write that stuff down. There's a lot more that I know were a part of what has gone on at our church. Some of which is continuing today, some of which is not going on today. But I did not put the softball team. Should have had that on there. Oh, that's right. Forgot about that.
Like a dinner theater kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And we turned this whole thing around.
And did you used to have a bus ministry way back?
I don't know. I don't know if there was ever a bus ministry. We didn't have one while I was here. We had a bus, but we didn't have a bus ministry. Yeah, we bought a bus from, what's the name of that church down on, just off of Powers on Fontaine. It's a Bible Baptist church down there. Yeah, Peaceful Valley Baptist Church. We bought a bus from Peaceful Valley Baptist Church, put our name on the side of it, and it never really ran right the whole time we had it. We sold it to a guy, had our name on it, and he abandoned it. I got a call from the police. Would you come get your bus? Not ours. Well, your name's on it. Yeah, we sold it. Oh, all right. So,
Pastor, I want to take you back to the name. I remember this African American guy here,
Fred
Fred Wick.
Wick. Wait, Fred, yeah, yes. Well, and the Matadis should be on here. That's right, Fred Wick.
Fred never had a white language.
Just him. Wow. Yes. Yes, we did. That was, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, the Seder is what I was thinking about when I said Last Supper dinners, that kind of thing. That Wednesday supper was a brainchild of Sabrina. That was. We've had a number of ideas that have worked really well in other settings. It didn't work well here. It doesn't mean that it was a bad idea. It just means it didn't work here. So. Yeah.
In so many ways, she led the ladies' fellowships, ladies' fellowship every month, and she tried to get women involved.
Yep, she had that ladies' fellowship that took place at right after Ironman on Saturdays. Daughters of the King. Yep. Yep. Say again?
Stockholm. Terry and Mary Stockholm.
Boy, that does not ring a bell.
No, that was probably before. Air Force Base softball.
Well, when you said Terry and it started with an S and they went to Omaha, I just had stack houses in my head. Well, I think it's good for us to do this kind of thing. Next week could be remember is that all these people and all these things that we did weren't all at the same time. So we weren't doing all these things at the same time, and all these people weren't here at the same time. If you add up all the people we were just talking about, it's well over 200 people. And we haven't even mentioned everybody, and we're not talking about anybody who's here now. And all their kids. So Jan and I have said this on a couple of occasions. If everybody was still here that used to attend our church, we'd be a church of 300 or 400, and that's true. But we're not, and not everybody is here, and because we don't have the critical mass of people to help us. There's a lot of ministries. Adult choir. I would love to have an adult choir again. We just don't have anybody to direct it right now. So. No, they have a worship team. Yep. And we can be thankful for a lot of different things. Airport Boulevard Baptist Church for a long time didn't have anybody who could play the piano. Everything they did was digitally recorded, and so they sang with a recording. That's the only way they could do their singing. God has blessed us in a lot of different ways. We've had some great instrumentalists who've come through here, and some people who've been very, very faithful in that regard. And in a lot of other regards. So I want you to come next week, but don't come thinking, wow, our past was wonderful and our present isn't so wonderful. Our past had its ups and downs, just like we're going through some challenges right now. Be grateful for what God has given us. and I think the other reason that I wanted to say this, to go through this tonight, is I wanted you to think about a church that's worth preserving, a church that's worth fighting for, a ministry center. That's really what a church is. It's a ministry center. It's a place from which the ministries flow. A ministry center that has been blessed by God in the past, is being blessed by God in some ways right now, and I believe can be blessed by God in ways that surpass anything we've ever seen up until this point. So don't use this as a, woe is us. Instead, use this as God has built a foundation here that we can build on. And I hope that'll be the case. Any other thoughts you want to share, Jan?
The thing that has hit me here recently, just over the last month, you had 5 in your membership class. One young couple that has been faithful to bring their child in a church that basically is older. And yet they said, we have visited everywhere and we finally found the gospel the way we want to learn. And they're willing to stick it out. And, that just amazes me. And now this new family has said, we're coming, because we're hearing the gospel, and now you're going to leave. And we've told them, as best we can do, it's going to continue. And they want to be members.
They're starting the membership class next Sunday.
That's another family of 4. To be out 2 months out and to have 9 people become members, I think is amazing in our church. And I appreciate what you just said. It's worth fighting for. And not just caving.
Yeah. The other thing about that is that the family that's coming, there'll be a baptism out of that, God willing. We have another baptism, an adult baptism, and possibly a third adult baptism coming in the very near future. All of whom are people who have been saved in all cases have been saved since they were quote unquote baptized. In one case, it was actually a biblical method of baptism, but the person wasn't saved at the time. Doesn't believe that she got saved until later. In the other cases, they were baptized in churches that did infant baptisms, and they know that they need to be biblically baptized. So, those are good things that are taking place in our church right now, and that's exciting to see. And what happened this morning with Gene and Dante? Who knows where that'll go? That if maybe Dante shows up next week with a family. I don't know. Could be. Maybe he's unsaved. Yeah, he just lives, I see, like 2 blocks down. So I'm assuming he's in these apartments over here, or maybe on the other side of the street. So, walks by our church all the time. Out for a walk this morning, decided to accept the invitation. Sometimes that's all it takes. So, anything else you want to share? Donald. Ooh. Yeah. Well, 2 of them are pastors on the list. They were our pastors. Our first pastor, Wes Clem, we supported Wes until he died. Our missions policy was not in place at the time, and we were among the churches, the very rare churches, that didn't drop support when somebody retired. And so we continued to support Wes until he died. We continued to support Les Newell until he died, even though he eventually then retired from missionary work. We continued to support him until he died. So those were 2 of our pastors, and they were part of our missions team, which I think was, when I first came here, I thought, man, that is unique. I don't remember that in any of the churches I was in when I was growing up. It was not a part of our missions stuff at Calvary Community. We didn't have any former pastors who were missionaries that we were supporting. When I came here, we had 2, which was really cool, I thought.
The other thing about that, always, because I think so highly of the Greens, and they've stayed with us multiple times, even in our home. But Wes Clem was the pastor in Mormon country,
Christine.
Christine, I couldn't say for a minute. Christine was invited to a VBS at their church. Her whole family was Mormon. And Christine got saved in that church. Where Wes Clan, who had been our pastor, was now in Utah. And then Christine grows up, gets married, and now she's on the mission field and back to one of our missionaries again.
Yeah.
It's just full circle.
Kind of a fun full circle thing.
Now their daughter's in Belgium.
Yep.
Praise the Lord. I'm just, when you start to see those fingers that, we may not have a large church right now, but our fingers of the past and present are everywhere around the world.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we've had, speaking of the military presence, we've had people in the military who are in fairly average, I don't want to say low, but average types of rank who have left here and have progressed up through the ranks. Dan Enslin was at the Pentagon. Pardon? Are they? Yeah. Yeah. I thought I remember putting them on.
I can't recall the man, we got an email from, this has been several years back, and he said, you may not even remember, but he said, we were on the verge of divorce when we came to your church, and you counseled us, and he said, we wouldn't have made it if we hadn't been at Rustic Hills. And he said, I just want you to know I'm a pastor now. Wow.
Yeah.
I think we sat there and cried over that one.
Yeah.
There's a family, I don't remember their last names, but they had girls that were named Spring, Autumn.
Yeah.
And I don't remember their last names, but I don't think they're on.
They're not on here. I'm sure of that. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter. They had all the four of the. You don't remember the name, do you?
I don't remember the last name, but I know who you're talking about.
That's fun. This is one of the reasons I want to do this tonight. And I wish there were more people here, although we could keep on going. It's already 10 after 6. Just with the few of us that are here, we could keep on going with this. But I think it's just good. It reminds us of who we are, who we have been, the foundation that has been laid here, and what possibilities exist for the future. And I'll just leave you with this. When I was functioning on the council at BCP, and by the way, this is other ministries that our church has been involved with. I've been involved in council work with Baptist Church Planners and with the GARBC as the pastor of this church. And speaking at camps and so forth, that kind of stuff is all part of the ministry of this church as well. When I was on the council at BCP, David Little was the president. And he talked about a time when his dad, who was elderly at the time, was planting a tree. And he went up to him and said, Dad, what are you doing this for? I mean, this is hard work, and you're planting a tree. This tree will never, you'll be gone long before this tree can provide shade or fruit or anything. And his dad's response was, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for the people who will enjoy it after I'm gone. And folks, that needs to be our thought process with respect to Rustic Hills. We're not doing this for us. Someday we're going to be gone. And back to this morning's message, we have a responsibility to hand that baton off. By the way, I had a baton in my office I was going to bring down, and I forgot. I was going to hand it off to somebody, and I just forgot to bring it down. So, but that's instructive. You know, if we're here and we're older, which most of us are, with the exception of Donald, everybody here is older. We're not doing this for us. We're doing this for the next generation. You start thinking about some of the kids that we have had come through here, the Tustin kids, the Lightfoot kids, kids who have come through who are serving the Lord in their churches in other parts of the world, most of them in other parts of the country, Ryan in full-time service, Chris in full-time service. Those are people who grew up in our church. The foundation for what they're doing with their lives today was laid here. So we need to be thinking about laying the foundation for the next generation. Warren? I don't know if the puppet ministry got in either. That was a big thing with Ariel.
Well, that was Larry Allison.
That's right, Larry. That's right.
He started that, basically. He built the whole first puppet stage. So his name's on here, but the puppets aren't.
Yeah. We only did the Parade of Lights float once because it was a ton of work. And it's right on the heels of Thanksgiving. It's really hard to put that together. But that was a great float. I don't know if any of you remember or if any of you have heard about that, but we put this float together. Paul Jaramillo drove the truck, and we had a flatbed trailer that we got, I think, from Ed Cooper. And Vicki Dahmer, who was just like a junior hire, and I think Jenna and Carrie, had like 3 or 4 that were all dressed up in angel costumes, right? So they were the angelic choir, and we had a nativity scene, and all of that was lit, and blacked out at the front of the bed of the pickup was a large, dark cross. 80 some floats. I want to say 88. 80 some floats. That was the only nativity scene in the parade. For a Christmas parade. Parade of Lights. And the truck was lit and all the rest, but that cross was in the dark. And the idea of that was, this is what we're celebrating. This off in the future is where we're going. Where this is going to take us. It was a great float. And I remember Adena Hackos walking alongside pitching candy out to kids, right? And others that were there. I remember Adena doing it. Others that were there doing the same kind of thing. And I remember watching that on the TV later on, and the announcers talking about how wonderful these little angels looked. And those of us who were parents could have said, yeah, well, they're not always angelic, but what, I mean, it just was great. So a lot of names we didn't talk about. I get stuff from Ron Hess all the time. Ron will send me a picture, or he'll send me, they've talked a little bit about coming back to Colorado. They're in Kansas right now. I should send that back to them. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they knew Twyla.
He married him.
Yep. Isn't that something? Yeah. All right, folks, thanks for coming. I don't want to prolong this, but it's been good. And I appreciate the opportunity with you to talk about our historic foundation. We have an historic foundation. And as a church family, we need to build on it. So let's stand, and we'll ask the senior member of the congregation to close us in a word of prayer.